We've got all kinds of things going on here tonight. First of all, after I'm finished, we're going to have Baden come up here after a bit, and that's in 4K. He's going to talk about the most recent and the most exciting data mode, or digital data mode, FT8. I'm not going to talk about that one. I've just got my feet wet with it a little bit, and that's where it is for me right now. Tonight, I am introducing digital data modes to some of you. How many of you have actually done data or digital on your radios? Okay, good. Let me see the hands of those of you who have not. I'm not trying to embarrass you, just want to know how many I'm actually helping. Okay, good. Good quantity of folks yet. Good number. The introduction here tonight is stolen or borrowed, better representation, from N2ATV's presentation. You know, I don't have the time to reinvent the wheel. This guy's done it, and he's done a really nice job, so forgive me if it's not original, but I can take it and use it, and I think that we can benefit from it. What we'll cover tonight, of course, is what is digital mode communication, and it is modulation, demodulation, and then tribulation sometimes. Depends on which mode you're trying to work with. Some of them are easier than others. Survey of some popular digital modes. What the heck are those weird sounding stations that we hear as we tune around the bands? I'm going to play some of those sounds for you in just a little while. We've got the audio from the computer hooked up, and I think it's still running and all that. We'll let you hear what they sound like if you've never heard them before. Setting up your station for using the digital modes. All you need is a single sideband radio, a transceiver that is, sound card, PC, some software, and of course, it's a brave new world. And the neat part about it is that some of you are people who don't like to chew the rag as I do. That's what we call it from the old timers days. Getting on the air, holding a QSO for a long time, getting to know somebody fairly well, you know, and then maybe you'll get back together with them. That's the rag chewing. And some folks would rather build equipment, get it running, and in this case, maybe just talk from the keyboard to the keyboard. So that's what this is all about. An alternative to that darn PC is hardware-based embedded digital modems, and we're going to see a few of those things here tonight as well. So what's holding us back? A digital communication setup or block diagram looks something like this. Your voice, of course, goes into your radio through the control, the volume control there, and basically your signal is introduced at a balanced modulator or mixer, which then gives you signal back through your bandpass filter and out of the radio into the air. Well, when you go into CW, all you're doing is turning on a tone, or in most cases, turning on the carrier of the radio. And what is CW? Does anybody know?
Continuous wave.
All right, continuous wave. Did you also know it's the oldest digital mode? It is. Ones and zeros. Hello and goodbye.
It's actually
all right. And then when we do digital, we produce tones again. You know, it's good tones, bad tones, on tones, off tones, mark, space, whatever you want to call it. And again, that goes through, usually, in our case, with most radios, it goes through the microphone input, or at least somewhere it's modulating the single sideband signal. So many modes, so little time. Has anybody ever seen or done all of these modes? Could you raise your hand? Not me. Never in the world. I've done PSK, 31, 63, sideband, or single, slow scan TV, I'll get it. HD slow scan TV even. RIDI, MFSK 16, 32, and 63, and all of that, MT63. I've even done Hellschreiber, Olivia, Packet, Pactor, Throb, Contestia, and that's about where it ends, right? Okay, it did a little Domino, did some Clover, played around with, where is it in there in the group? That's it. That's all I've ever done. Because these are not necessarily popular modes, all right? You know, some of them take up way too much audio space on the spectrum, so they're not using those. The undisputed king, of course, is PSK 31. Everybody's done PSK 31 if you've done anything, right? You agree? All right. And this is what it looks like on the graph here. Okay, as you can see, and the Waterfall and so forth. Those are some nice, clean PSK 31 signals. And it's called PSK for phase shift key, the most popular of the newer digital modes. Now, I should point out that this particular presentation is old, so some of it really doesn't quite cater to today, but we'll get there little by little as I go along. There's a wealth of information on the web regarding BPSK, or binary PSK, and QPSK, quadrature PSK. You'll want to look that up and study it because that's a little more in depth than what we want to go into tonight. And because the bandwidth of PSK 31 is only 31 hertz, 31 cycles per second, many signals can fit into the same bandwidth occupied by an SSB signal, which is, of course, usually 2.4 kilohertz approximately. You can open some radios up to 3 kilohertz and get a little bit more in there. It's quite common to see 15 or more signals on the 2.5 kilohertz waterfall display. RTTY, one of the older modes. A lot of people still enjoy that. It's a back and forth kind of thing, and boy, when you get RTTY, what do we call it, contests going, good grief, I've never seen so many RTTY signals in my life all across the whole band.
What does RTTY stand for?
Stands for radio teletype. And I don't think they say that here on this screen, do they? So we can't help that. Hams began using it soon after World War II. It was actually, I believe, being used in World War II. And then all of a sudden it finally spread out into the amateur radio community. It was the most popular contest in DX mode. It's heard on 7040, 1490, 21090 megahertz. Let's see what else we can add here. Virtually all RTTY is done by computer today. There are a few guys that are still running some good old-fashioned teletypes. We've got them over here. Vaden has one, is that right?
I used to.
That's who it is. I know we have some others.
Nick.
Oh, that's right. I got to see that whole setup of Nick's. Oh, I went crazy over there at the Ham Fest a little while ago. That was awesome. That guy has put some major work into it. All right, and again, RTTY is done today by computer and sound card combination, producing the mark and shift tones with 170 hertz shift between them at 45 baud for the most part. Most software caters for different speeds and shifts, so you can play around with a little bit faster one, but most of the time that's what you're going to hear is 45 baud. And unlike most digital modes, RTTY is transmitted on lower sideband. I didn't know that until I read this. Pactor, I got into that for a little while. I had this little box that you set up totally separate from your radio, you know, and you hook into that and command it to send Pactor signals. And that was kind of interesting because with a handshake thing, you know, back and forth, you'd hear rant, and I play a little bit of that for you after a while. It sounds better on the speakers. And it's error-free because it just keeps repeating until it gets it right. What else? Used primarily to exchange data, such as the WinLink 2000 system, and it's a 400 hertz bandwidth, 2 times 100 baud PSK. All right, let's move on to this one and go on to MFSK 16. Now, I made myself some notes because I kept going, MFSK, does that mean modulated FSK? Well, it does, but it's also multiple frequency FSK in this particular case. Whereas FSK is binary, meaning only 2 discrete frequencies of audio. So that's something that a lot of folks may not know. FSK 31, of course, is just 2 discrete audio frequencies. And this one uses 16 tones. It's got good performance in poor signal conditions. And at one time, it was probably one of the winners for that, you know, low-level signals and so forth. But today, it's been outranked already. Heard a lot on 14.080 megahertz. Tuning is quite critical, by the way, on MFSK 16, although AFC, or auto frequency control, helps somewhat. And let's see, the top image of this signal and the lower image is of an MFSK signal, which is 500 hertz wide and twice as wide as an MFSK 16. So I believe the one at the top is 16 and the bottom one is the full 500 megahertz 32, MFSK 32. So it's 32 bits, or is it 32? Yeah, Yeah, okay. Hellstrider, one of my favorite modes. I kind of like this for one major reason. I wonder if anybody out there happens to know what that is. Why would I use Hellstrider when I could use any other mode? Any idea? All right. Hellstrider produces a tone or a bunch of clicks, basically, and little tones that are duty cycle low, very low. I can run a kilowatt of Hellstrider, and it's probably actually putting out about 300 watts or the dissipation per time. And so MFK puts out an interesting screen. You can kind of fill it in with your own eyes as you're looking at it. If it has a little dropout somewhere, it makes it easy for you to say, well, okay, I know what he's trying to say there. Hamburg, you know, and so forth. And J053, you might see the first one looking as JU, but then the second one immediately repeating makes it clear. It's a very interesting mode, a very old mode, and if you haven't tried it, it's fun. There's not a lot of people on it, so you have to really go looking to find somebody. Even weak signals can be decoded as your eye or brain combination can fill in the blanks where the signal fades. Packet, one of the first digital modes that I ever got into on 2 meters was kind of fun. And that, of course, is a declining popularity, but it's still heard. Used for messaging, message forwarding. APRS uses it. Some live keyboard-to-keyboard QSOs, but you hardly ever see that anymore. HF forwarding heard near 14095, and APRS is on 10150. I didn't know that. I just learned that as I was doing all this looking up. And live QSOs at 14105. Anybody else heard anything on Packet lately? No? Guess not. All right, we're going to move on past Packet. It's old story. Olivia has 8 tones over a 250 hertz bandwidth. It was a new HF digital mode when this guy wrote this. And it's heard at 14105 and 14109 megahertz. Extremely resistant to fading and QRM. You can get full copy on stations that are barely audible. Even ones that fade down to almost zero seem to still print well. It has different variants, of course, from 500 hertz to 2 kilohertz, and different number of tones. It can be very slow, but the slow contact is better than none at all. And today we know what that's all about. All right, let's go on with ALE. This is something that was new to me. Yes?
Each one of these, like Olivia and stuff, have all these different settings for bandwidth and frequency they use. How do you determine which one to use?
Well, most of the time the default is the lowest one, believe it or not. Very few guys are using the bigger, wider ones because of the bandwidth it takes up. So, you know, most of the guys are trying to use the lowest bandwidth. All right, so if it's, well, let's see, going back to Olivia for a moment there. Forget all the different settings that they have. I don't have it right in front of me. Well, 250 hertz is the lowest setting, obviously, it says, and 2 kilohertz is the widest. Well, the widest will give you more data throughputs, and you can't even keep up typing with that kind of throughput when the thing's going. But 250, most people can, or if they've got some macros, they'll set those up and just send a macro, you know, and then sit and wait for the guy to come back. And while they're reading his text, you can type your text in and get ready to send that as well with just hitting enter when you're finished. Did that help?
Yes. So how, if you were on the other end and receiving this, other than a slight difference to hearing it, how would you determine? Just try the lowest and trial and error, or is there a way of checking to see?
Well, the more you look at it and see the bandwidth on the waterfall, you'll begin to eventually say, okay, that's got to be the very narrow one, so that's 250 hertz. You know, you can say Olivia 250, if I remember that's the proper way to look at it. And other than that, if you're using something like DM780 for that, you can actually click on it and it will almost tell you, I think in the new version of DM780, which is part of HRD and Radio Deluxe, it'll tell you what it is, and that's kind of nice. Okay? And any other questions along that line? Yes?
I was going to say that there are some graphics that you can look up on the internet that will show you the different modes look like, that's like a linear there, but it will show you the others. And I would suggest doing a big screen and have just a little hard copy on the desk. So when you tune across and listen to a while, you'll go, oh, that looks like this, and then you can set up conditions on the radio.
All right, thank you, Dave. And, all right, let's move on here to ALE. This, by the way, this one was used by Brian Lloyd, WB6RQN, on his Project Amelia Earhart flight around the world. How many of you knew about that? Did you learn about that? Single engine airplane flying around the world, kind of duplicating the Amelia Earhart flight. And he used HF ham radio ALE, which is rather interesting because it's an automatic situation that determines the best band for communicating between two stations. And it will alert the operators when the path is determined, and that's pretty cool. I never got it working on my system when he was in the air flying. I kept trying to hear him on sideband. He wasn't there because he was doing it in ALE almost all the time, which is digital, totally digital modes. If you go to, let's see. All right, I learned that the worldwide de facto ALE is the worldwide de facto for digitally initiating and sustaining HF radio communications, per Wikipedia, and to provide a reliable, rapid method of calling and connecting during constantly changing HF ionospheric propagation, reception, interference, and shared spectrum use of busy or congested HF channels. So ALE is kind of new to me, and it's interesting. Go look it up. You'll find a lot of information out there. It does require a special piece of software, and if you get it working, come on back and share it with the rest of us, okay? All right. JT65, one of the most popular modes today until FT8 came along, and developed originally as part of the WSJT weak signal modes software package by Joe, K1JT. It can also be decoded by other packages such as multi-PSK, and it's found the use on HF and can be found around 14.076 and 21.076 amongst others. Of course, you can do the same thing on 40.076 and 07.076. Signals that are virtually inaudible can give perfect copies, so its performance is excellent on the noisy HF bands. And the transfer rate is low, as are most modes that excel in low signal decoding. As you can see up there on the graph for the waterfalls, it's kind of wide, okay? JT65 is a little wider than some of the others. There's a couple of waterfalls there. And it looks like somebody did a swipe of a frequency all the way across. Designing an HF signal or station rather is easy. It really doesn't take too much. Single sideband, as I said before, a good sound card in between. Or if you have one of the newer radios that has a USB port on the back, they have the built-in sound card in the radio, and it does the control of the radio and the audio for the radio as well, and that's a very nice thing. But if you don't, then of course you need to get set up with basically a not too fancy computer. 500 megahertz Pentium will do it, and for Macs, a modern iMac will do it. Some of the software, there's not as much software for the Macs as there is for the PCs. And don't rely on the built-in sound card, because if you do, all the sounds that the radio transmits can also be transmitted over the air, and you don't want that to happen. So separate sound card gives you the choice of putting your audio out through that sound card totally separate and isolated. And this is an example of one of the cards by creative.com, if you look it up. It converts received audio to data and data to transmitted audio, and stereo if you wish to do SDR with their I and Q channels. Connects to the PC over a USB connection. I'm rushing a little bit because there's so much to present tonight, and with Baden picking up FT8 in just a little while. We also have a possibility of actual, and it's looking good. All right, we got a thumbs up down here behind me. We will actually do a complete demo of transmitting some digital signals right here from this location over the air. External sound cards vary a lot. As you can see, Rig Blaster has one, MFJ has one, Signal Link, and Rig Expert. And if we move right along there, we'll see that the setup is not too difficult. The sound from the radio goes right into the sound card of the computer. And even though this says mic in, that's probably not advisable. Line in is a whole lot better place to plug it into the back or the front of your computer, as the case may be. Your transmit audio from the computer should go from the sound card through the interface, which reduces the line out. They say speaker out. Well, line out's a little bit better. It's not so loud and easier to control. And then the sound card interface reduces it to a level that can go into the mic input. Now, this is the mic input. You see my cursor moving there. And that's where this should go if you were to move it over. And the keying of the radio is through the same control. So the microphone actually plugs in, and I'll show that to you next. I guess not, it'll be the one after this. And this is what you can do if you don't have that little circuitry that lets you key the radio to isolate it. Let the computer put a signal out on the RTS or DTR pins of the RS-232 port on the computer. And if you set this up, it isolates things very nicely, and it will take the signal from the radio, which is usually a positive voltage coming from the relay, and ground it. And when it grounds it, it'll transmit. There is a cornucopia of software out there, and you can't see those. I can barely read them here. So what happens is we find out there's FL Digi, which is a very popular mode. A lot of folks here in the club are using FL Digi, and apparently it's a lot more robust, has a lot more modes than DM780 with HRD. So that's impressive. There's Digipan, which I didn't know too much about. It was introduced the concept of digital panoramic point and click tuning at the time that this came out. It's a PSK31 program, apparently. I've never used it. Does anybody ever use Digipan? Okay.
Long ago.
Long ago. All right, it's outdated, yeah. There's so many new things out today. So you don't necessarily need a computer, by the way, a sound card or software. You can also buy these little devices that are out there today that do the whole thing right from your keyboard, right into that, and right into your radio. So take a look at those if you will. The most important thing doing digital is to keep the audio levels down. Too much transmit audio will distort your signal, especially with PSK31. You increase the sound output from your computer or interface until you see the ALC meter setting activity, showing some activity, and then back it down just to the point where the activity stops on the ALC meter. Very important. If you don't, it will distort, and it will look bad, and there'll be a lot of people out there very unhappy with it. The worst PSK signals ever are shown here, for instance. You can see that top one is just awful. Supposed to look nice and narrow like this one down here. Even this one is kind of bad because it's you know, spreading out all over the place. And down here somebody's got a computer that's drifting or a radio that's drifting frequency, and that'll give you a headache. Can't stay with anybody on that. So what's stopping you from joining the thousands of hams using digital modes daily? If you need an Elmer, let me say that we have Elmers here, okay? And if you need to contact the president here, where is he? He's still out here. Yes, he is. And he'll set you up, let you know. You can go online, I believe, still on our website, right? And find Elmer. It used to be there. Maybe it isn't, but we'll work on it if it isn't.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I noticed that I can't find the Gazettes anymore on the website.
At the top, all the way to the right, newsletters. That will bring up another window and list them all.
I didn't see it. I honestly didn't. I was looking for it. Okay. My mistake. My bad. So make sure if you need some help, there's quite a few of us that would be very glad to help you get set up so that you can do it. Yes, Paul?
Ray, just wanted Dave to mention about Elmering and about the next
Yeah,
Tuesday.
next Tuesday. Just that if you need an Elmer, come next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Next Tuesday, right here, right? 7:30?
7 o'clock,
7
same
o'clock.
time. Doors open at 6:30.
Okay, there you go. So get here early if you want to see There's going to be a lot of folks like to come to that one. I've heard some good reports, absolutely. And you can get Elmering here right then at that point and talk about that as well. All right. So let's see, what else have we got here? Oh, some references here. If you want any of these, I'll be glad to share them with you at the end of our program this evening. That pretty much ends my portion of the program tonight. I did want to have you hear some digital sounds real quickly here. Some people don't know what Antor sounds like. Here's what it sounds like on the air. All right, that was a short one. When you hear the long burst of sound, that's being transmitted, and the little short burst is an echo back that says, got it, okay? Or repeat, or whatever. So that's, you're actually hearing both ends of the transmission, both stations on that one. All right, let's go to Clover. That's different, isn't it? All right. Can everybody hear that all right out there? All right. So let's go to G-Tor. I never did this one. Okay, there you go. And I'll have to keep closing these, otherwise I'll have them all over. Now here's Hellschreiber, and you'll get an idea of why I like it. That's a lot like your voice. As you talk, it gives the burst of energy and transmits. So that one, I think it's only one tone, as I remember. It's just on and off tones at a certain rate, and that's what produces the video. All right, MFSK, multi-tone. That's pretty different. Okay, that's enough. That drives me nuts after a while. MT63. Oh, come on, we're not changing the name of it. There we go. I suspect MT stands for multi-tone. That's 63 bits wide, so there's a lot of tones going on in there, for sure. All right. Pactor. That was one of the early versions of this particular thing of handshaking back and forth. And Pactor 2 had a little bit different sound. Very similar. I think it was just tuned to a different frequency and then throbbed. This is amazing. All right, there you go. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to me, and we're going to invite Baden to come up here. Baden in M4K is going to do a presentation on FTP. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Did a great job covering the virtual aspects of digital communication. FT8, FT stands for Frank Taylor. And Joe Taylor won the Nobel Prize for his work with low signal, that's the right approach.
Weak signal.
Weak signal. He was trying to do a lot of moon bounce. I've never done moon bounce, but I can appreciate his effort because that's a long way up and it's a long way back and it takes a lot of time. So he's adapting his software as he goes, and he's creating these new modes. I think you mentioned it, Ray. Probably, unless you're very patient, spending a lot of time listening to some of these sounds before you see any information on your computer screen is something that's going to bore you, or did me. I can't speak for you. I want a little more action. So when the FTA came out, apparently I'm in the same crowd as a lot of others, and it's very fast. You can have a total two-way exchange of information in 2 minutes. That's a lot faster than the JT65, which takes 4 to 6 minutes. And the other impressive thing about it, when you turn your radio on and you're listening and you hear a watch the S meters, that's the noise floor. And if there's nothing stronger than that, you're not going to hear it. CW has to ride over that so you can hear it. Well, digital, it doesn't care. It's going to send a signal and receive a signal, and it can be below that, right? That's the cool part. What's happening is the computer's doing all the work. It's transforming those components of the sound that are coming by audio that are sub-audio levels that we can't hear or discern, but it's receiving them and converting them into text. This is live, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
You have a pointer?
Pointer? No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I know it. Pointers don't work, laser don't work with this
It's not
screen.
on that screen, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, well, at the top is a section, let's just call it the waterfall. The waterfall, each one of those signals, like over here by 1800, is a signal. It's pretty strong because it's got high yellow and red tones. But you look in some of these other areas, and it's much less. But there's a signal there. And what happens is the readout. This is everything that's coming in on the band activity. That, by the way, is what 1800. It's chopped off. It would go out to 2400, but the screen's only supporting this. Or you can use a click and drag, and you can move it back and forth. But what you're doing, for instance, you're watching this. You want to see somebody send CQ. Here's CQ E76C. That has to be Bosnia. E76. So he's sending CQ. Here's CQ, and this guy says CQ2EX is call sign WE2LEW. That's his grid square. Anytime you see the green, these things are, you get used to it. Green means CQ, and it's quick graphics, I guess is the word I would use. When you see the background in white, this is a QSO that's going on. Here, he got a contact. E76C was called by EW88MV, and his grid square is this, but they made a connection. So there's going to be a 2-minute activity.
Where was E76C?
Bosnia.
Okay.
What's happening is once you see the CQ, it'll oftentimes show up over here on your receive frequency and what? It's pretty fast, I tell you. When you see a CQ, you're going to call them. You got to have that mouse ready, and you double click that CQ wherever you see it. It will pop up and it will fill in this box down here with your generate your standard messages. Okay, here's one that's going on. He called, WB2RIS called the YO3, but he didn't get a connection.
Hey, Brady?
Yeah.
Explain the 15-second cycle of what's going on there at transmission. I think
Good point.
clear that up.
Good timing for it. Down here, this is the bar graph showing you the time of transmission, time of reception. Transmission, reception. It goes, you see, 13 out of 15 seconds. That's when it changes over. It also, if you sent CQ, like this guy here sent CQ, that's a Spanish station. If I sent CQ down here, click on that, and somebody hears me, it's going to come back, it's going to be highlighted in red.
Oh my God, correct.
Huh?
Gotta keep the mic right in front of your mouth. Otherwise we.
No,
I had
think
that
it's
Trevor
not.
Christmas party.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sure
There you
is.
go.
All right, so then, if I send CQ and come back with it highlighted with a background of red, that means
You're
the.
back. There you go. It's done.
Handicap. Okay.
CW man.
Yeah. Well, just like CW, the idea is to make a connection, exchange information, and then sign it off. Typically, what's happening is you're sending CQ and your call sign on this line and also your grid square, where he is. So if you see somebody sending CQ over here in the band activity, you double click it, it's going to pre-fill all these lines of information, and you're ready to go. You have to enable the transmitter. Transmitter will call him until he answers. Or automatically, if he goes back to somebody else, it's going to disable, and you go back to the monitoring mode. It's pretty automated.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. Now, let's say you called him, and let's say you're ACH MH. ACH MH has a grid square FM 09, and the guy, well, unfortunately, he's not playing ball with me. He calls CQ again because they didn't make a connection. What's going on is that once you get a contact established, then automatically, you see it over here, automatic sequence. Once you get the guy calls you back, acknowledges the connection, then he sends you a signal, and it's here. It says CX2AV WB2RIS -10. That means that your signal report on a signal to noise ratio is at a -10. That's below the noise level, but he's hearing you. That's just incredible when you think about it. I mean, that's pulling stuff out of the air, but you're converting it into usable data. Okay, and so he does it twice. All of a sudden, he says, okay, Roger, Roger, Roger. This is all pre-canned.
So you don't even have to do your own macros,
Yeah.
it's already in there.
Well, you can modify the macros, but you only got 13 characters you can play with. It doesn't add a lot. You saw that one guy a while ago, he sent CQDX. You'll see some of them CQRI, Rhode Island, and then his grid square. So you can do it. It's kind of like a text editor. You just put your cursor in here, click it, type in whatever you want to add or delete, and then that will stay there until you change it again. Or it'll default back to normal when you go back to entering a CQ. There's just a lot of mechanics that I could get bogged down in. The exciting thing about it is we know propagation is good, not good.
It's down the tubes.
What is this software and where do you get it? It's free, it's online. I would suggest you Google FT8, or you could say Joe Taylor FT8, and you can download it. It resides on a server, I think, at Princeton University, where his lab is, but he furnishes it for free, and you can download it, and away you go. You have to just kind of get familiar with the layout, and just take your time. You know, listen first.
The software is WSJTX. One of the modes within WSJTX is FT8. So when you look for FT8, you may be confused because it's going to tell you need WSJTX.
Good point. Very good
Okay.
point. Yeah.
We could show them that right now, show them the different modes.
Okay.
Okay, you got a connection? Okay, you got a contact going?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill's got a contact here. So, let's see, Bill must have sent a CQ. Or did you answer one?
I answered the CQ.
Okay, so we got this is the report that the AA0CW replied with, said Bill was -10. Bill went back and said, well, okay, here are -12. Readability. The guy comes back and he says, Roger, Roger, Roger. And then Bill says 7-3. The little pop-up there was automatic logging. So, yes, I mean, this thing was everything but wipe your nose.
What's your opinion of Roger, 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 and no 73? I'm monitoring the FTA group.
Yeah.
And there's discussions on there. People don't like them if they don't send 73 at the end of their
I
queue.
know. That must be the land of opinionation. As far as I'm concerned, if I get an RRR or a 7-3, I've got a contact, it's logged.
Okay.
But that really is, the software doesn't pop up and say logged until the RRR or 73 shows up.
Okay.
Power-wise, transmitter-wise, antenna,
Yeah.
how are you doing this?
Well, you can use it. I use it on 80 meters with a wire antenna, 35 to 50 watts.
The live version
Right here.
Right now,
What's Bill
I
doing?
have my FT857 hooked, I have the coax under the door to my tar heel sitting on my car. I'll put out maybe 10 watts or so.
Against the hangar.
Yeah.
Bouncing,
About 10,
little
12
reflector.
feet from the hangar.
Can we listen to it?
Yeah, sure.
You were bringing it up.
Just need to bring the mic.
Keep in mind that's multiple stations.
Yeah, where's it coming out of, down here? Yeah, you got it, there it is. Yep.
So notice how everything gets quiet and then the start of the next 15-second period, everybody starts transmitting at that time, and then they quiet down, then they come back up another 15 seconds.
Do you need a time program on your PC?
Yes, you do, to be able to
Use the mic.
get everything in sync with the time.
Let me show you a couple things up here. You see?
We don't sit.
This is like the CQ here, W2 MGF. That's the time of the transmission. That's the dB signal to noise ratio. These are variations from the transmit frequency. It was very small, but these numbers here, 1412. Well, look up here. 1412 is right about here. So that's his relative frequency. This is in the audio range of 24,2500 hertz or 2.5 kilohertz. So you're listening for this information in the audio range from this frequency of, well, it's probably 7074 in terms of the frequency on 40 meters.
Yeah, it's right there in the
Yeah,
center.
oh, yeah. I need my new eyes. So these are things you can worry about after you get kind of into it. Let's start looking. You can put your cursor. You see the little red and green symbol up there? This is where you can put the green. That would be the listening position, and then you can hold the control key down and click in an open spot, move your transmitted signal over there so that you're not in a pile. Okay? That, when you're working DX, this may be one of the tricks to getting a contact, because if you and 700 other hands are on the same frequency, you're just begging for the equipment to save your bacon. What you can do is move this thing around, move your transmit frequency independent of your listening frequency. And run out of air. All right, any questions so far?
Tell us what, we can't really read the call signs. What, are you seeing some DX call signs up there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, here's Colombia,
9Z.
South America. Here is 9 Zulu 4 Yankee.
And 5 Tango 2 Alpha India.
I know, I wanted to get into propagation. Conditions
5T, 5K.
we're in the low end of the solar cycle. It's not like we can operate on 10 meters and hear everything with a whisper. We have to work for it. On 80, 40, if you got an antenna for 160, these are great bands for this mode. Okay? At night. Yeah. 20 meters, 15 meters, and believe it or not, if you tune on 12 meters, 17 meters, you might not hear a thing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't send a CQ, because somebody else, whose radio is watching the waterfall.
So technicians have data privileges on 10 meters. Is there any 10 meter activity?
It varies. It varies. But you can't assume there's nothing there just because you don't hear a signal. This is listening below the noise level, and it will pull it out.
Just to go along with that, I was testing when I was setting up my JT65 a couple years ago. And so what I did was I didn't want to get on HF and everybody to hear me while I was testing. So I called out on 6 meters in the middle of the evening, like 11 o'clock. And I called out. There was nothing on the waterfall. It was a black waterfall. And a guy called me back from Ohio. And we had a QSO, and I could not see it on the waterfall. So just because you don't see anything doesn't mean that there's not somebody there and that they're not listening.
This is exciting. You can go home tonight, try 15 meters, try 20 meters. Normally you get dead, okay? Any audible stuff, you won't hear it. Go to the frequencies or whatever, click that button and that will set the common frequency up for that. And just watch the waterfall. Watch this activity in here. Oh, by the way, if you double click on erase, it cleans the whole board. Because clutter can be distracting. Huh? Okay. All right. I'm probably running out of my window here. The thing that I hope you will do is get on here, because this is HF activity. Exercise your privileges and try this new technology. It's exciting because you can make contacts. You can work for Paul, for instance. He's got all but 2 states. What, in 2 weeks? 3 weeks. You can try for DXCC. Probably get it in a month.
I'm up to about 40 countries.
Yeah, he's got 40 countries. So, this is appliance operating, but it sure is a lot of work. I mean, a lot of fun. It's no work. It's just being there and letting the equipment work for you.
Did you mention that the time, that setting the clock on your radio is very important?
Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay. I didn't see it on here.
Can anybody remember? Let me interrupt right there on that time. It's DM4. What's that one that's the best?
Dimension 4.
Dimension 4, right? Yeah.
Mindburn.
Yeah. DM4 is easy to set up, though. It's just download it, install it, and you're done. That's it.
Make a note. Dimension 4. Do a Google search.
Yeah.
Download it to your equipment. It will sit down here somewhere if you want to.
In the system, right.
And every day before you start doing this, just click DM4 and click on sync, syncing your computer to NIST.
Right.
So you're only hundredths of a second off from the standard. If you're not close in time with the other guy, you may hear something, but you won't see it.
Right.
It's got to be time sensitive.
All right, so I have a question. In Windows, you can change the time server to one of the NIST servers.
It doesn't count. It's not close enough.
It's still not close enough.
Kyle told me, I didn't believe it. 3 hours later, I said, maybe I'll try that.
Dimension 4, you can
worked.
set it up to sync every 10, 15, 30 minutes.
Right.
Ah.
Yeah, you don't have to go in
And you
and
can
start
have
it every time.
You can have it start when you start window.
Right.
Does the waterfall always move that slow?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
I was
that's
actually asking
standard.
that for other people. Kind of thing.
Well,
You can stretch it
let me
out.
tell you, when you're watching this window down here, that's 15 seconds.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to call some guy, you got to scroll back up here to find him. You know,
To call it.
you got to enable transmit, and then when you see him, you double click it. You may miss it, but computer remembers what you want to do. So unless somebody else answered him, you're going to stay enabled. In the next cycle, you're going to send again. Here's ZF. What is that?
Cayman Islands,
Cayman Island.
All right.
EA6. That's
Spain.
Spain.
Yeah, right.
So you can work a lot of DX with really no big effort. You can do it with a piece of wire. Okay? So don't be timid about giving it a try. Okay.
That'd work on your stuff.
I'd like to add a few notes about how I set up my connection between my rig down by my feet and the software. I'll bring up the configuration settings, and this has the typical choices of you can connect to your Elecraft or your Yaesu or your Kenwood, but it also supports connecting to the rig control clients of other pieces of software, such as Ham Radio Deluxe or FL Rig, which is used for FL Digi. A lot of the Aries people should know this. So I've already set up FL Rig to talk to my FT857, and this software is piggybacking on that connection to FL Rig, so that I don't have to configure this to talk to my Yaesu. I guess they did that because this is a very specialized piece of software that supports a few specialized modes. So I guess it's easy to use piggyback or use the other clients. There's another one called Ham Live, which I think FL Digi also can talk to. And you got your typical icons, and you got some SDR rigs in there. But I think that's pretty handy, so that it simplifies the configuration of the software. And if I wanted to, I could bring up FL Digi, and then it would connect through that same. And FL Rig is this thing here, and I can control these are the frequencies of the two VFOs. If I want to go to to 80 meters, to change the frequency there. I don't want to stay there, but I downloaded this a day or two ago, and I played with the configuration, got everything working, and I actually made my first 2 contacts here tonight on FTA, successful contacts.
I would just like to say that I really appreciate Vaden helping out with this presentation tonight, and for Bill doing this. And that's a lot of setup time and a lot of getting it just right and making it work tonight, and using his own radio right here and his power supply and his sound card and everything else that it takes to get it set up. Thank you both very, very much. All right.